Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, please check out the video description. I will leave the contact information there. Thank you. So today I thought about doing a video that I probably should have done a while ago, because I realized that I started doing these series about the spouse nakshatra, or rather how to see your spouse or romantic partner's main characteristics based on the nakshatras, based on the respective nakshatras. So I already started by making the video on sun nakshatras like a while ago, and I will be linking that in the video description if you are interested, or if it applies to you, and you will find out if it applies to you by the end of this video. So basically what I thought about doing is, because I realized that I haven't actually made a concrete description of how to figure out which nakshatra actually describes your partner best. Although I did reference these topics like repeatedly in a bunch of previous videos, I haven't actually centralized the information, I think, in one single video. So I figured that I probably should do that before I continue with that series. Now, if you already know this information, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I'm mainly addressing this video to people who maybe haven't watched any of my videos and maybe don't know much about astrology, and they want to figure out how to see which nakshatra influences their potential partner, or the partner that they're going to be attracting or end up with in relationships. So first of all, what is nakshatra and why is it important? Because I already talked about, like, for instance, Jupiter through signs and Venus through signs, and how that affects your partner archetype, especially. So Jupiter for women, Venus for men. And I'm gonna get into the different planets that signify your spouse in a bit. But what is nakshatra? So nakshatra is basically a lunar mansion. These are based on constellations in the sky. There are 27 of them, and I think these have been written about since, like, I don't know, 3000 BC or something like that. I'm not even sure when the earliest texts were, but I have heard that actually nakshatras predate the zodiac signs. So at the beginning there was nakshatras, and then God said that nakshatras were good. Sorry, that was a bit of a weird joke. Anyway, so basically nakshatras or lunar mansions. And by the way, to see which planets in which nakshatras are placed in your chart, you can just Google, like, there are a ton of informations online, but just in case, like, you want a quick answer, I'm gonna link the page on Wikipedia that I use a lot of the times. It's very convenient. The only inconvenience is the fact that they write in I think the Hindi words for the signs in sidereal placements, but they mention both the sidereal and the tropical placements. So I think that's very convenient, because even when, for instance, when you look for celebrity charts online, like I often do, you will see the placements in tropical zodiac. So in order for you to see sidereal placements, oftentimes you have to calculate it yourself. And this is why it's useful to also know the tropical placements of the nakshatra, so the equivalent in tropical placements, you know what I'm saying? And once again, tropical placements are about 23 degrees and 40 minutes ahead of the sidereal placements, which means that if, for instance, your sun is in 23 degrees and 41 minutes of Aries, it will also be in Aries, it will be in 0 degrees 1 minute Aries in sidereal zodiac. If it's below 23 degrees and 40 minutes, then it will be in Pisces, actually. And this is why you know, the placements are different and you need to calculate them separately. But like I have mentioned previously, a lot of the time I have found the sidereal zodiac to be a lot more accurate in predictions of all sorts, and I couple that with whole sign house system, unlike most tropical astrologers who use the Placidus house system. But just a small parenthesis. So yeah, the nakshatras are really important because they give a lot more information than just the zodiac sign. Each of these nakshatras, well, without getting too much in depth, but they are, you know, divided by different types of organization based on planetary rulership, based on the animal sign that governs the so-called primitive and sexual nature of each nakshatra. There's an entire compatibility system based on nakshatras. They give, you know, priceless levels of insights that you cannot get from just the regular zodiac. Each of these nakshatras are ruled by, like I said, ruled by a particular planet. They also divide into, like I mentioned before, in a video, I think the one that I did about moon secrets and compatibility. So they divide into 3 modes of expression, kind of like the zodiac signs in tropical zodiac, or in sidereal, the same thing, are divided into cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Nakshatras are divided into ganas. I think it's ganas. I keep mixing these up. I keep forgetting if it's ganas or gunas. I think it's ganas. Anyway, these are basically modes of expression, and they divide into Rakshasa, which is demon nakshatras, Manushya, which is human nakshatras, or Deva, which is godlike nakshatras. And based on, you know, the I guess you can say spiritual level of evolution of each nakshatra, but it's rather about their mode of operation. So Rakshasas, or demon nakshatras, are the harshest, and Devas or the godly nakshatras are the softest, quote unquote, meaning they're spiritual and more understanding and all that stuff. But of course there are variations based on what the nakshatra rulers are and other aspects and all kinds of things. But yeah, it basically, you know, the nakshatras give you a lot of really important information that you cannot get from the signs. So which nakshatra influences your spouse the most? First of all, I am going to start with the traditional planets, which are Jupiter for women and Venus for men. And here I'm going to make a parenthesis. So I have mentioned this a lot of the time. So according to traditional Vedic teachings, Jupiter is the husband in a woman's chart, and Venus is the wife in a man's chart. But there are differences, and more specifically, I'm going to make the parenthesis here when it comes to people from LGBT communities, because I have had a lot of people ask me, even in previous videos, like, you don't reference them, or like, what happens if you're gay? To be honest, I haven't extensively studied the subject, but one thing that I can say, like, intuitively and based on my reading experiences, reading people's charts over the years, is that mostly it's about energy. So it really depends on what energy you identify with the most. So even if you're a woman and you're straight, for instance, if you have a lot of strong masculine energy, like if you have Mars in a angular house, for instance, meaning the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, or the 10th house, especially the 1st or the 10th house, or especially women who have, let's say, their feminine planets, particularly the moon, which signifies your basic personality and your mind and your basic way of thinking and your basic personality and emotional needs. If you have the moon conjunct the other masculine planets like Mars, Sun, Jupiter, Mercury to some extent, especially if you have moon conjunct Mars or moon conjunct Sun, these women tend to really own their masculine energy, and they tend to really express themselves through their masculine energy a lot. And I've noticed this time and time again, like for instance, women like this, they might actually be attracted to men that are shown by their Venus placements rather than the Jupiter placement. Or they are equally important. They will look for a man that is more, that is just as much their Venus placement as it is their Jupiter placement. You know what I'm saying? Because if a woman is expressing her masculine energy, she will need feminine energy in her life to counterbalance that. And it's the same thing with men. You know, some men are more feminine in nature than others, and they can be straight and they can be gay, right? Again, if by the same token, if you look at a man's chart and you see he has moon conjunct Venus, moon opposite Venus a lot of the times, or if he has sun conjunct Venus. So if these conjunctions between the masculine and feminine planets in any person's chart will make them own the energy of the opposite sex a lot more than a person who doesn't have these placements. By contrast, for instance, a woman who has, let's say, moon conjunct Venus, this is going to be a typical girly girl, or moon opposite Venus. These women are much more likely to be, you know, the traditional woman and to see themselves as very feminine, and they will look for a traditionally masculine man. And oftentimes, because they don't have any connection between their feminine and masculine planets, assuming that they don't have any connection. So not just looking at Venus, but also look at Venus and Moon, but looking at all of their planets. So if you don't have any contact between masculine and feminine planets, they will tend to disown their masculine energy, and they will tend to project their masculine planets onto the men in their lives. Just a small and maybe not so small parenthesis. So basically you have to take these things into account. In general, actually, Venus, being the natural ruler of the 7th house, is said to signify the spouse archetype for both men and women, technically speaking. But in traditional Vedic texts, Venus, being the feminine archetype, being the wife archetype, is the wife in a man's chart more than it is the husband in a woman's chart. Yeah, and Jupiter is the husband in a woman's chart, but also Mars signifies the kind of man that a woman finds physically attractive or is looking for when it comes to a short-term fling or like a passionate affair or whatever. But Mars is the warrior archetype, and because of that, Mars is kind of like the bad boy archetype that doesn't want to settle down and will not really invest in a long-term monogamous relationship. And that's not what women want in a marriage or a long-term partnership. Jupiter, on the other hand, signifies the kind of man that is going to be kind of like a guiding force or a teacher in her life and the lives of her potential children. So that's why Jupiter signifies the husband archetype, or the long-term partner, not necessarily husband in the legal sense. Right, so this is the first thing you want to look for. You want to look for which nakshatra the Jupiter is placed in if you're a woman, or if you identify as more female, and which nakshatra your Venus is placed in if you are a man or you identify as more masculine. This is the first thing. The second thing, equally important, you have to look at the ruler of the 7th house. This is true for both genders. So the 7th house for you is the partner, literally your opposite, the opposite of your ascendant. So this is the person who's going to balance you out. This is your marriage partner or long-term partnership archetype. So you want to look for the 7th house ruler and which nakshatra it's placed in. And then you also want to look for thirdly, and equally important, you also want to look for the Darakaraka, which is another concept in Vedic astrology, which I have talked about repeatedly in past videos. It is the planet with the lowest degree. So the planet with the lowest degree, meaning you look at all the planets from Sun to Saturn without Rahu and Ketu, also without Uranus, Pluto, Neptune, because Vedic astrology doesn't take these into account. So yeah, you look at Sun through Saturn, and whichever of these planets has the lowest degree in any sign. So it doesn't matter which sign it's placed in, but it has to have the lowest degree. So I don't know, if you have like let's say Sun at 5 degrees Pisces, and this is the lowest degree, all other planets are in 10 degrees or above, then Sun is your dark karaka. Even if the rest of the planets are in Aries, Gemini, or whatever. You know, so lower degrees on the circle when compared to Pisces. Yeah, that's basically it. You're gonna understand when I get to the example at the end. And so yeah, these are the three main things that you want to look at. Now, fourthly, because again, astrology is about nuances, it is about subtleties, and generally when I do a personal consultation, I look at like a lot more than this. But these are some very basic things that you want to look at to see the overall archetype. Without getting too complicated, without getting unnecessarily complicated. Of course, you can also look at the Navamsha or the D9 divisional chart, but that's not so important because basically Navamsha, the way that I see it, and I think is commonsensical to see it, signifies life after marriage. So in order to get to the point of marriage, or life after the age of 35, in any case, whether you're married or not, so in order to get there, you first have to find a long-term partner, which is already described in the D1 or the natal chart. So there are also things you can say about someone's partner from the D9, but those are not about like determining the kind of person that you're going to end up with, not necessarily. It's more about how your life is going to be once you get involved with a certain someone, or after you reach the age of 35 to 40, midlife, whatever that is. Right. So, but fourthly, to a lesser extent, what you want to look at is planets in the 7th house and what nakshatra they're placed in, and also if any planets are conjunct the signifiers from 1 to 3. So if you're a woman and you have a planet conjunct Jupiter, or you have a planet conjunct the 7th house ruler or the dark karaka, you also want to look at that to a lesser degree, without getting unnecessarily into details. And basically, and you're particularly lucky if some of these overlap. So like, for instance, if you're a man and you have ascendant in Scorpio, then the 7th house is going to be ruled by Venus. So the 7th house ruler, which is point number 2 in my list, is going to coincide with point number 1, which is Venus. So if in your case, you're going to have a particularly strong attraction to a particular type of nakshatra because these two things overlap. So this is how you kind of estimate how much of a preference a person has towards a particular kind of person. In some cases, it's easier to read than in others, you know. If you have like multiple influences, you have each of these in a different nakshatra, then it's going to be a little bit more complicated. Or oftentimes what can happen is you're most likely going to have multiple partners, that each of them showing a particular type of nakshatra in your chart. So this has been the general description, and the case study, just took a random case study that I have in my database, which again is Nicole Kidman. Yeah. So, and I'm gonna put her chart on the screen. And like I said there, so as you can see in her case, Jupiter, which is the husband significator, is in Cancer and it's conjunct Venus. See, in her case, you kind of see that, well, at least she has one so-called masculine planet conjunct a so-called feminine planet. Already just by the fact that she has Jupiter conjunct Venus in the 10th house, I could say that she's going to meet her future spouses in artistic fields and in her professional life. But this is not related to nakshatras, just based on her planetary conjunctions and house placements. But looking at Jupiter, so it's placed in Ashlesha, which I'm going to get into at the end. So after I go through each of these on the list, I'm going to get a little bit in depth into what these nakshatras mean. So you have Ashlesha, and then you have her 7th house lord, which is Mars. Again, in her case, this is kind of making things easier because Mars, being one of the natural signifiers of what a woman finds attractive, it will just further strengthen her preference for the Mars Nakshatra. And in her case, Mars's Nakshatra is Chitra Nakshatra, which is also naturally ruled by Mars. Her dark arca, as you can see, the planet with the lowest degree is the Sun. Because if you look there on the left where all the planets are listed, she has, so Sun in 5 degrees Gemini, that is her lowest placement of all degrees. All the others are at least 11 and above. So yeah, her dark arca is the Sun conjunct Mercury. Just added that for extra information. And the nakshatra of Sun is Mrigashira Nakshatra, which is also ruled by Mars. And also she has Rahu in the 7th house, which shows foreign spouse. And it's in Ashwini Nakshatra, which Ashwini is ruled by Ketu, which is really funny because Ketu is actually the opposite of Rahu. So this shows that she's going to like a partner who is somewhat spiritually inclined. And this theme kind of repeats itself. So here again, you want to look for several signifiers that point into one direction. So if there are multiple themes or energies that coincide or that are related, you want to look for that. So here, remember that she has Ketu ruling. So she has Rahu and Ketu in the 7th house. So her partner will be of foreign origin and will take on the characteristics of Ketu, which is very unusual and very spiritually oriented. Spiritual can also be religiously oriented. In any case, Ketu shows a person who is very peculiar, not particularly rational, and definitely spiritually oriented. So keep that in mind. And then just to give you some examples, so here, right, and so 2 out of 3 signifiers, Jupiter and Mars, which is the ruler of her 7th house, are falling into Rakshasa Nakshatras, so demon Nakshatras. This shows that she's going to be attracted to a guy who is going to be quite blunt, quite fierce, honest, doesn't, pull his punches, and a go-getter, definitely. And so both of them are in Rakshasa. Ashlesha is ruled by Mercury, and then her 7th house ruler is, so Jupiter is in Ashlesha, it's Rakshasa and is ruled by Mercury. Mars is in Chitra Nakshatra, which is Rakshasa and ruled by Mars. Her dark arca is the Sun, and it's in Mrigashira Deva, ruled by Mars. So already I can see that two of her signifying nakshatras for the spouse archetype are Rakshasa, and 2 of them, not the same ones, are ruled by Mars. So clearly this shows that she's gonna go for somebody who is very ambitious, very goal-oriented. Again, reinforces the theme of the go-getter. And Ketu, yeah, and like I said, Rahu is in the 7th house, so also influencing her spouse archetype, and ruled by Ketu, which is a spiritually oriented energy. And just to give you some examples of the typical careers that are associated with, let's say, Ashlesha. So remember, her Jupiter is in Ashlesha. Associated careers include writer, editor, teacher, lawyer, politician, astrologer, yoga instructor, chemist, pharmacist. Her Mars is in Chitra, so the ruler of her 7th house is in Chitra, and associated careers are architect, interior designer, landscaper, advertiser, writer, media personality, jeweler, fashion designer, surgeon. Her dark arca is in Mrigashira, which is ruled by Mars, and it's a Deva Nakshatra, so it's a godly Nakshatra. Associated careers, spiritual vocation, so things like a clergy person, writer, poet, artist, musician. Okay, So the common denominator between all of these professions is something like writer, media personality, and one of them also says spiritual vocation, right? Remember Tom Cruise? Tom Cruise, her first husband, I think it was her first husband. It was definitely the one that everybody knew about. He was very vocal about Scientology. He was all about Scientology, and even after they divorced, actually, he just became increasingly more, known for his spiritual, because you can't, spiritual and religious beliefs, right? So this reinforces not just the Mrigashira professions, but also the fact that Rahu sits in the 7th house and is ruled by Ketu. So this shows that she's going to be attracting people who are spiritually oriented. And also, common denominators between all these professions also include media personality, actor/singer, which is also kind of a media personality in a way. So celebrities, basically, and writer. And her current husband, Keith Urban, is a singer-songwriter and a producer, a music producer. So in her case, I think it is quite explanatory that, she attracted both of her husbands, both of her main relationships have really been quite well described by the nakshatras. So this is how you kind of look for the nakshatras and which of them is the most relevant for you. So you don't even have to calculate. Again, here, as you can see, her chart is calculated in sidereal. I don't know if the writing is visible, but I did set it to sidereal. And if you want to see how to calculate your chart like this, it's really simple. And I also made an instructional video on how to get this chart, but you can also just look for free calculators online. But if you're interested in seeing how to get your chart like this, you can check out the video description. I gave the information there. And yeah, you don't even have to calculate your chart in the sidereal placements, because you can find your nakshatra placements based on the tropical zodiac if you check out the Wikipedia link that I will leave in the video description. So this has been just kind of to give you an overall, like, tiny little taste of what you can see based on nakshatras in terms of the spouse archetype. And I will be continuing that series hopefully soon with another video. The series that I started about the spouse archetype through nakshatras based on planetary rulerships. I have only done it for the Sun-ruled Nakshatras so far. So that's Krittika, Uttara Phalguni, and Uttara Ashadha. But I will be continuing with the series. Right. So this has been it. And once again, if you have liked the video, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell. Also, please leave me any feedback, any questions, any ideas of what you might want to see in future videos in the comment sections. And and hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, again, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of subjects. Please check out the video description. I will leave the contact information there. Thank you.